Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we've got plenty of good stuff. Well, it's not really good stuff, but we have plenty of stuff to talk about. On a positive note, your Minnesota Vikings are 1-0 in the preseason for, what is it, the fifth time in a row in the Mike Zimmer era? 34-25 victory over the New Orleans Saints. Not that it necessarily matters, but that did happen this weekend. On the flip side, the Twins lost a four-game series with the Indians over the weekend, dropped that 3-1 overall, so now they are officially tied in the AL Central. So we'll be talking about losing out on that, 11.5 game lead at one point. So we'll spend a good portion of the show talking about that, but as usual, the Vikings will take precedent, and we will spend the majority of the time talking about the preseason game and a couple other topics that, of course, we have to hit on. If you've been paying attention to the news at all, you know that we have to talk about Garrett Bradbury's butt sweat. So that's going to come up at some point. That you knew we were going to talk about it. So we'll get to that eventually. Before we do that, let me just quick run off this ad real quick if I can find it. And this one is for SOCOM Creative. It says, are you ready to call an audible for your advertising? It is 2019. If you're not advertising your business on Facebook or Instagram, you are losing, period. End of story. Winning Facebook and Instagram ad campaigns are well targeted. It's hard to sell lawn care to people who don't own lawns, for example. Scroll stopping, kind of like stopping the run early in the game. If you want to get your customers' attention on Facebook or Instagram, you got to find a way to stop the scroll. And lastly, they make money. Winning campaigns aren't about likes and shares. It's about the dollars in your pocket. If you're ready to kick ass with your social media ads, check out our friends over at SOCOM Creative. All they do is come up with ways to help you explode your business and bring in new customers. So one more time, that is SOCOM Creative. Make sure to check them out for all of your advertising needs. All right, Drew, let's jump into some Vikings football here. So I guess let's start with the preseason game, since that overall went pretty well, at least from my vantage point. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was. Again, the score doesn't matter, but it was really nice to see the first team offense just march down the field and score. Kirk,
sure.
I really like the scramble. I think that was one thing that a lot of people kind of had a gripe with him last year, is when there was a running lane for him. He wanted to, stick out or stay in the pocket or stay behind the line, whatever it was, as long as possible to wait for a throw. Whereas, the 10-yard run is an option, and he took advantage of that. And, obviously Adam Thielen is still stupid good on that.
That was crazy.
Yeah, that ball was, it was a good throw and not a great throw. And Thielen made it work anyway with coverage that really was also great as well. One of those where a great throw and great catch, in this case a good throw and great catch, can beat great coverage.
Let's stop there for 1 second here, because I kind of want to hone in on that specific play, because I was going to bring that up as well.
Yeah, it was Thielen's just stupid good, but that throw was like, it's one of those where if you get a receiver like that's that good, you don't need to be perfect.
That's exactly what I was going to say, and that's what I was thinking during that game. So I was, like I assume a lot of our listeners, and probably you too under most circumstances, I was scrolling through my Twitter feed while I was watching the game, right? And so I'm seeing a variety of different responses. I'm seeing the response that you had, which is the same one that I had, which is, wow, Adam Thielen is ridiculous. I'm also seeing a lot of people saying, wow, Kirk Cousins is ridiculous. So I kind of wanted to correct that a little bit here. I am by no means a Kirk Cousins haters, by the way. I just want to set that out, since I don't think I haven't really had the opportunity to do that since we started doing this show. But that throw was by no means perfect. He just was able to get it in the general vicinity of Adam Thielen, and that's good enough. So I'm cool with that throw, but let's make no mistake about it.
Well, I'm cool with the decision more than anything.
Yes, I do too.
That's one criticism I had too last year was Diggs and Thielen, when they're one-on-one, many more chances could have been taken, and it seems like, at least, and it's literally one drive, but I like that it seems like there's more of an emphasis on taking those shots down the field.
Absolutely. That should be second nature. If you have two premier wide receivers playing on the outside for a reason, I understand that Adam Thielen plays on the inside too, but in this particular case, I believe he lined up on the outside, or he ended up on the outside. Point being here is that he was on the outside and cover on one-on-one coverage, and you love to see your quarterback take those shots, especially when you have Cousins who, for all the things that he's known as, one of those things is his accuracy. He has pinpoint accuracy, from everywhere from a short throw to a deep throw. He's always been known for being fairly accurate in those situations, and that's the key word here is fairly accurate. That's all he needs to be with these two guys. So I think that he only threw 4 balls on Friday night, but it was nice to see that one of those balls was a deep completion and just taking a shot downfield, like you said.
Right, and again, when the first team offense, again, the big concern was, you got new coaching staff, you got a new running scheme, which it seemed to work as well. Madison seemed to find some lanes for the run game, and that kind of set some things up. And I know there was also an addition, or I guess an emphasis of play action, which it was a big staple of Kubiak, and I know. Looking at the numbers, I think Nick Olson has posted a bunch of these on Twitter, but the efficiency of the Vikings offense last year when in play action was markedly higher. So you'd like to see the Vikings, explore that quite a bit more this year, and it looks like they did quite a bit and did it well against the Saints. You'd like to see that moving forward as well in both preseason action and then hopefully when the regular season arrives.
Absolutely, and how about that offensive line too? Not just the first string offensive line was fine. The second string was fine. Third string, fine. I mean,
fine across good with me.
And honestly, and that's what I was going to say is that it all looked fine. And this wasn't just on passing plays. Obviously, the pass protection was good enough, but also on running plays. And I think that you brought this up a little bit already. In Kubiak's game, you're going to see a lot of zone runs, right? So I wanted to touch on zone running a little bit and how helpful that is for guys specifically like Dalvin Cook, who we didn't get to see on Friday night, but it will be good for him because a zone running scheme, the best way that I can simplify it for anyone that isn't familiar with the difference between a man blocking scheme and a zone cover blocking scheme, are that a zone scheme it's easier. There's more room for your offensive linemen to make mistakes. So they're basically going to be shifting all to one side, and basically they're going to block the guy in front of them. And if they don't see someone directly in front of them, they're either going to go to the second level or they're going to find a guy. That's the goal. Is that you're supposed to be heads up on someone at all times. But since you're in a zone scheme, you're shifting the line.
Yeah, and the unit blocks an area versus
exactly.
In a power scheme, you are assigned a person to block.
Right. So theoretically, if you put this out there. In a man scheme, if one guy misses a block, you might have a tackle for loss. In a zone scheme, if one guy misses a block, well, then maybe the C gap, for example, doesn't open up. Now, then it becomes up to the running back to pick the right hole, and that's why you have to like Dalvin Cook's ability to adapt to this scheme so well because he has quick feet for one, some of the quickest feet in the entire NFL, regardless of what his health status has been the last couple of years. And he has great vision as well. So if you think that if you can open up even one hole, and that means that not everybody needs to be perfect. You just need to open up enough room for him to kind of wiggle through it, and all of a sudden you've got him to the second level. And I like Dalvin Cook's chances one-on-one with any linebacker. So that was one thing that I noticed during the Madison snaps, especially. Because as a guy who hasn't been in the NFL long, obviously he's a rookie, I was kind of expecting to see him pick the wrong holes more often than not.
And it's not like he had a bunch of explosive runs, but he was picking the right spots. Ability, right, and he also has that ability to fall forward too and gain an extra yard or two when it's usually not there for maybe other backs. So and that's the thing. The running game doesn't have to be flashy, and Dalvin Cook does have the flashiness as well, but you just need something that can be consistent, keep the defense on their toes, and open up the play action game, which has been so productive for the Vikings the last couple of years.
Absolutely. So if you can get that defense to hold for a split second longer on that play action pass, how you guys have seen the clips, you guys have watched the games, you know how quickly Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs can get open. If that play action can get those linebackers' feet to just stop for a millisecond, that split second could be the difference between a long completion downfield and having to throw the ball away or taking a sack or whatever it may be. So it definitely bodes well that that the zone scheme was working, and it was working with a slower, less fleet of foot runner, let's put it, with Madison. And I thought that I was actually very impressed with his debut. The one thing I would say about him is that he's clearly more Murray than Cook, right? He's a bigger runner. Like you said, he's going to fall forward. I don't see him getting to the outside very well. I see him more of as a between the tackles runner, which isn't a bad thing. I made a comment about that on Twitter, and people were like, well, he doesn't need to get to the outside. Well, you're not wrong, I guess, but every runner should be able to go between the tackles or go outside the tackles or go between the guards for that matter. Every runner should be able to do each level of these. They have to be able to threaten it, right? So I would like to see Madison more to the outside, especially with Cook's injury history. I don't love the idea of Madison having to be the primary guy for 6 games. But I did like what I saw out of him in his first, in his debut, and he caught the ball out of the backfield, which is something that we haven't seen a ton of yet, but it's something that has been in his scouting report, and people have speculated on that he's a fairly good pass catcher out of the backfield. So I think overall you have to be very satisfied with the debut of Madison. Cousins obviously marched down the field and did his thing, like he said.
First team offense gets an A for that effort. I mean,
absolutely.
It's one drive again, but they get an A for that. And
they did their job, right? They did what they were supposed to do,
right.
And then they got taken out of the game. So you can't be anything less than satisfied, I think.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And then I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, because I think we might disagree a little bit here on both Mannion and Slaughter, how they played. Because here's the thing. I'm not going to expect either one of them to look like a starting quarterback. I want someone that's not going to light the world on fire if they're inserted into the game due to a Cousins injury. And I feel like they both showed, at least in this game, in their performances, that they are capable of maintaining the Vikings, not necessarily keeping up to the Kirk Cousins standard, but keeping them competitive, given the talent around. That's the early impression I have right now. Again, a lot of preseason left, a lot of camp left, a lot of practices left, but that's my impression so far.
I'm holding firm on my stance on Sean Mannion. I do not like the guy. I do not want to see him throwing more than 15 yards downfield. I do not trust him with the ball in his hands. I don't trust him moving with the football. I'm just not a fan of Sean Mannion. I'm sure he's a great guy on a personal level, but on the football field, I want absolutely none of Sean Mannion. So I know that Kyle Slaughter hasn't been able to show it in practice, but every single time he plays in the game, he's good. Every single time. I mean, he dropped back to pass 7 times on Friday night. Completed 6 of those passes. He averaged 8.9 yards per attempt. I understand that he's playing against second and third stringers, but he did his job. He does everything that the Vikings have asked him to do. He's done it well. So I am more pro Slaughter than Mannion, and I think it's going to stand that way. I don't think there's anything Mannion can do to change my mind. I just don't like Sean Mannion. I don't trust him.
At least you're
upfront
up with it. You're not being objective, which is fine.
I mean, if all of a sudden Sean Mannion comes out and he starts slinging 15 to 18 yard completions on a dime, then all right, then maybe all of a sudden you're going to make me a believer. But I have historical precedent to state that Mannion has never been anything more than just kind of dink and dunk passer that, I guess he kind of fits with what you're saying, that, if you put him in there for a single game and focused on Dalvin Cook, I wouldn't hate the Vikings' chances alongside their defense too, but I don't trust Sean Mannion for more than a game. Like, not a chance. I just don't think he can win football games consistently at this level.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. No, I'm not trying to say he's going to lead the Vikings to the promised land. He's not a Case Keenum backup where you're not going to win 13 games if your guy goes down. It's just the backup quarterback position is not very secure for the Vikings right now. There's not a reliable option anywhere. But I guess I'm encouraged based on what I saw against the Saints versus what I had presumed the situation was like before the game. I thought my expectations were relatively low, and now they passed my expectations. But again, it's still not a secure spot on the team. Like, there's still a hole there and a concern if Kirk goes down.
There's definitely a concern. The thing about Mannion is Mannion reminds me a lot of Sean Hill. And Sean Hill was
I was going to actually mention his name because I was going to bring up that Titans win in 2016 when the Vikings won with 2 defensive touchdowns, and maybe that's what it takes if Kirk Cousins goes down.
Sean Mannion plays a lot like Sean Hill when Sean Hill is like 400 years old. That they have the same playing style. They're basically the same quarterback. And I mean, Sean Hill made a career out of that, so maybe Sean Mannion will as well. But he's not like the thing that I like about Sloter is that he provides that upside, that untapped upside. Whereas with Sean Mannion, there isn't really any upside to be found. Like you get what you see. So you're picking between one of two quarterbacks, and for what it's worth, Kirk Cousins does have a very stable injury history. I'll knock on wood real quick because we all know what happens with Vikings players. But
yes.
It does suggest that it might be better for the Vikings to have just a kind of a one-game replacement backup as opposed to,
Sam Bradford.
Yeah, Sam Bradford would make a lot more sense, honestly. Like, I don't, and they have $5 million.
I'm here for it. I am here for it.
They do have $5 million in cap room now too, after releasing Kevin McDermott over the weekend too.
True.
So, I don't like Sean Mannion. That's not going to change. Kyle Sloter is my backup quarterback as it stands, and I think that he did everything in his power to kind of solidify that spot through one game in the preseason.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to declare myself Team Mannion by any means because I don't think
you don't want to be on
Mannion.
that team.
I don't think there is a Team Mannion, but I wouldn't say I'm on Team Sloter at this point. So I'm just kind of there. I'm just hanging out with all the backup quarterbacks, and also Sam Bradford's kind of like I invited them over to hang out as well. So we'll see, how that works out.
That's totally fair. How about the other guys on offense, and then we'll flip over the defense. A couple other guys that stood out to me. I was very impressed with Mike Boone because he did exactly what I was talking about earlier with that zone scheme, cut back and found a hole and went 60-something yards downfield on that rushing attempt, which is awesome.
I think.
I didn't like the getaway speed because obviously he got caught, but I was very impressed with him to be able to find the right spot and cut through it. Amir Abdullah, minus the fumble, also looked really good. Looked like the reason why he was a second-round pick, way back when. So I was impressed with his long speed. He's definitely very dangerous in the open field. And then also Tyler Conklin, who I have given...
I was going to mention him too.
I've given zero credit to him. Like nothing. I've overlooked him completely since he's been drafted. I haven't been impressed with anything he has done, but word from camp from just about everybody is that he's been extremely impressive during camp, and then he goes up and made one of the better catches on this side of Adam Thielen throughout that preseason game. So I was very impressed with his performance as well.
Yeah, and like I think I mentioned this in our last show, if the Vikings keep only 3 tight ends, David Morgan is on the bubble, right? I mean,
it's starting to look that way. I mean,
Conklin's showing up
because so at this point, if you look at the body of work between Conklin and Morgan obviously has the edge there because he's been playing basically since he's been a rookie. But if you look at the potential and what they're able to do in this upcoming season here, part of me is starting to believe that Morgan's going to start the season on the pup. I can totally see it happening.
Sense, yeah.
And then that will give you the opportunity to sort of weigh the odds even more and see who makes the better fit. But Morgan makes the most sense from the Jim Kleinsasser perspective, where he's going to be a blocker. He's going to catch the ball if you throw him a quick 3-yard flat to the right side of the field.
Yeah.
But he's not like a game-breaking tight end. And granted, you do have one of those in Irv Smith, so Conklin might be kind of a mixture of Smith and Rudolph, somewhere in between those two guys, who you trust him to go up and get the ball a little bit more. But he's not as adept as a blocker as Morgan is, so it might, theoretically, it would make more sense to keep Morgan because he gives you more, you can do more with him in your offense than Conklin, who's more of kind of a repeat and possibly down the road a better version of Kyle Rudolph. I'm saying, theoretically down the road, if he continues to improve and Rudolph continues to decline with age, then he could be a better version of Kyle Rudolph.
Good clarification. Necessary clarification.
Yeah, right. So that's what you're going to get from Conklin. With Morgan, you get a guy that's going to help you immediately this season. So right now, I mean, if Morgan comes off the pup, I can see them keeping 4 tight ends because it would be very difficult to get rid of Conklin.
Keeping 4 tight ends is a very normal thing. It's not like it's absurd to think that. It's just,
especially if you only have to keep 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah. Right. Plus, now after what we saw against the Saints, the fullback situation also might be a little iffy as well.
What makes you say that?
we saw. God, give me the pronunciation of that guy's
Blazing
name.
game.
Blazing game. I'm just gonna. It looks like that. So blasting game. Anyway, how about that guy running up and down the field like a? It looked like he had 4.5 speed. I don't know. This guy's a beast. And he's throwing blocks on that Boone run. He looked productive out of the backfield, both, especially as a receiver. Like it, I don't know. I mean, again, playing fullback is not about having the ball in your hands as much,
right?
But it's
he is the type of guy, though. He is the mold and kind of like the athleticism to be a great special teams player. So. Yeah. If it becomes a matter of CJ Ham versus Kari Blazing game, if I'm pronouncing that wrong, someone correct us on Twitter because I have no other idea on how to pronounce that last name. If it comes down to that, I mean, you take the special teamer, right? But it's gonna be CJ Ham this year because Blazing game has
CJ plays special teams too, so
right.
I mean, you get, and it's not like he's a bad special teamer by any means. It's just it's two different styles of fullback,
right?
From what I've seen. So it kind of depends on what they are looking for. Obviously, CJ will have the upper hand, like kind of similar to the whole David Morgan thing. But
right,
it's just I think it's worth.
There will be a couple of tough decisions that the Vikings have to make here, and ironically enough, one of them might be at fullback if this guy continues to play the way that he's playing, especially to play with the effort. Because you know that, like, I'm not saying that necessarily matters to me. I mean, it's good that he's putting in effort to his job. Like, I'm proud of you. But, like, you know that rubs off on Mike Zimmer, too. Like, that rubs him the right way to see his fullback all the way up and down the field, doing everything in his power, however little amount of power he has on this roster, doing everything he can to maximize his opportunity. You like to see that for sure. And I think that it would be difficult to get out of this preseason game discussion without talking about BC Johnson, too, who also made one heck of a catch on what I would consider to be an underthrown ball that had that cornerback turned his head around, probably would have been intercepted.
Yeah, maybe.
But he made Sean Mannion look good on that play. And to go up and get it type of thing, I mean, we haven't seen that from Treadwell yet. You know, like we haven't seen that from Treadwell in a preseason game and a regular season game.
I remember he made one-handed catch against the Packers in the Case Keenum game.
And that was a very nice catch.
That's the only highlight. I mean, he has the touchdown against the Packers last year, and then he proceeded to make the drop that almost lost him the game.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, the receiver depth chart is wide open right now.
Well, I mean, so you've got. I mean, let's play this out. We're 1 week into the preseason. You've got Thielen and Diggs, who are going to be 1A and 1B no matter what. Then you've got Chad Beadby, who has, by all accounts, impressed during camp. You've got Treadwell, who has basically done, according to everyone, essentially nothing during camp, or just kind of done his job. I guess he hasn't done anything spectacular.
For what it's worth, he has been, quote unquote, impressive in camp 3 years in a row going into this year.
Right.
So.
A little bit harder to believe.
You take it with a grain of salt. You know what he does in camp preseason.
And then you've got Jordan Taylor, who I personally am not too enthralled with. I've seen people have kind words about him, but I'm not overly impressed with anything about his game. I mean, he's fine for a number 4 or number 5 receiver, but I'm more interested in that bottom half of the depth chart that could potentially move up with Jeff Bidet, who we talked a lot about on the last week's show, with the speed, the over-the-top speed and whatnot. The two rookies in BC Johnson and Dylan Mitchell, who are both impressive athletic talents who kind of need to work on their fundamentals. So, I mean, I think it definitely goes a long way for BC Johnson to make a play on one of the 2 balls he was targeted on. He did catch both balls that he was targeted and made a big play on the one. So I think you like to see that on a fairly crowded depth chart. If you're a wide receiver, I mean, if you're a undrafted or late round wide receiver, what depth chart would you rather be on right now? Honestly, you've got 2 guys up top that you can learn from. I mean, you're not going to replace either of them in the first or second year of your career, presumably anyways. So you got those 2 guys to learn from, and then you've basically got wide open space from 3 to 6. I would be thrilled if I'm Jeff Bidet, Dylan Mitchell, or Olabisi Johnson. This is ripe for the taking. 3 spots right there. They are the 3 most athletic guys.
Yep. In an offense where there's going to be opportunities to catch footballs.
Absolutely.
an offense that throws the ball a lot, even while a lot of the targets are to Thielen, Diggs, Rudolph.
Right.
Aldrick Robinson had a lot of production last year. Treadwell had too many targets early on in the season. I mean, there's opportunities there for sure.
I mean, Kirk Cousins, they're going to spread the ball around. Cousins has shown a propensity for moving the ball beyond Diggs and Thielen. Like we saw him throw into triple coverage with Treadwell.
Almost.
Yes, he threw into triple coverage with Treadwell last year that turned into a pick six. Like, I mean.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's the Eddie Jackson.
I'm still mad about that. Yeah. So it's like.
Well, I think we all are.
Yeah. So I mean, you look at the opportunity here, and it's nice to see a couple of these guys, making the most of the opportunity, which is the first preseason game. And then over on the defensive end of the ball, I don't think there was a whole lot to write home about. Hercules was definitely impressive because he has the one sack called back, and then immediately he came back and got another one later on.
Holmes looked good too.
And Jalen Holmes also had a sack too. So it makes sense that those two guys would stand out. I believe those are the only two guys that hit the quarterback, if I'm not mistaken there. Correct me if I'm wrong down the road. But I was very impressed with both of those guys. There was a couple of different times where, and I said this on Twitter, I thought that Mataafa actually looked like Tom Johnson at a couple of different points in the game. Because he has that quick first step, so you like him rushing the passer. I don't love him as a run defender, though. That's going to kill his game. But as a guy that comes in on third down, for example, he would be the optimal type of guy to mold with Shamar Stephen. Whereas, Shamar Stephen's this like big, massive human who clogs the lanes and basically is a zero tackle. Whereas you've got Hercules, who can probably play the 3 technique a little bit more soundly. So depending on the down and distance and depending on the situation, I would like combining Hercules with Shamar Stephen. And Jalen Holmes probably has the inside track to that right now and did hurt himself by any means by playing well in the preseason game too. But I think that Hercules is making more of a name for himself than his name is after playing in preseason game last week.
Oh yeah, and like it's all about the energy too he brings. There's an undescribable, is that the word, indescribable kind of energy that he brings too, that it both from the fan perspective and it seems like on the field. So I'm rooting for him to make the team, and it looks like he's going to at this point. And maybe he'll get some reps too, because it seems like in camp and in practices he's getting kind of cycled in with the ones sort of in their kind of experimental packages and pass rush, because I saw one today where they had 6 guys in the line and they had Hunter and Barr outside with Hercules kind of right there in the middle of the 6 guys. And there's a bunch of different packages that they've tried, but point being, it seems like his quickness off the line is going to provide some versatility, which Mike Zimmer, as we've talked about before, kind of likes to have.
Yeah. Absolutely. So overall, a solid performance, exactly what I think you want to see in a preseason game. You got no injuries, as we mentioned multiple times. First team offense marches down the field and scores, and did so in the minimal amount of plays. The rookies showed up and did their thing. You saw Madison get a couple of nice carries. Irv Smith Jr. had a couple of catches that were both nice. Then you also have the improvement by a couple of the second and third year guys, with Conklin making a bit of a name for himself in that first game. And so I felt like everyone kind of made the most of their opportunities there last Friday. So overall,
also Dan Bailey didn't miss.
That's true. He only had extra points though. So
yes, I know, but it's worth noting that he didn't miss, because I feel like the next thing we're going to talk about is kickers and punters and holders and long snappers. So
yeah, that's probably
that's me making a transition.
That's a good transition. So why don't you go ahead and enlighten me on this whole special teams fiasco we have going down in Minnesota?
Yeah, well, so a valuable trade asset was put onto the market this week out of Baltimore. I'll say it that way. I'm not going to butcher this guy's name again.
Corey VED-vick.
Is that it? Corey VED-vick?
VED-vick.
VED-vick.
So
Okay.
it's like Michael Vick, but Ved in front of it.
Okay. Well, Vikings, it's worked so well in the past for the Vikings to use draft capital on kickers. But,
right.
So they used a 5th rounder to get this guy in Baltimore, who, by all accounts, has lit it up in Baltimore, both as a kicker, as a punter as well. I think the problem is in Baltimore, Justin Tucker is arguably the greatest kicker of all time. So
Right.
he doesn't really have a spot as a kicker there. Vikings give up a 5th-round pick for him. He's in town now. And it seems like that was the corresponding move to get rid of McDermott, to waive him. Is that what they did?
Essentially, yeah.
So cutting wins the long snapper job.
And that opens up the spot to bring in a new guy out.
We don't know. Teams. Part of the problem here with the kicking and Bailey's like inconsistency in practices and whatnot could be because they have been shuffling long snappers. They have been shuffling holders.
Right.
Who knows? But now they have at least an answer there. And now we just got to figure out where VED-vick fits in because I was following along on the practice today, and Chris Thomason from the St. Paul Pioneer Press tweeted something along the lines of like, you guys try and figure it out. Dan Bailey is holding or practicing holding while Matt Weil has not done a thing besides watch practice today. So maybe VED-vick's just going to be a punter, and then Bailey's going to kick. But if that's the case, then you got to find somebody that's going to hold. I don't know.
It's the most interesting special team situation that the Vikings have had.
The Vikings special team situation you can think of.
This is as strange as it really gets, right? You're shuffling long snappers after. By the way, I haven't gotten a chance to say anything about this, but I do not condone spending a draft pick on a long snapper. I just want to get that. I want to get that out of the way here. But the Vikings did that, so you have a battle between McDermott.
They picked. Used the draft pick on a long snapper to now replace Kevin McDermott, who won. What was it? The gritty, pardon my take, grit award of the week last year for getting his finger cut off against the Rams.
Maybe that affected his snapping. Maybe that's why he got cut this year.
Well, he made it the last 12 weeks of the year last year.
I don't know, but point being here, so you've got the shuffling in long snappers. You're bringing in this guy from Air Force now who's going to be your starting snapper. That's just how it's going to be. McDermott is officially gone. And he was good. I was very satisfied. He didn't screw up in 4 years, right? I don't believe there was any mistakes that McDermott made. So
it's funny how you judge a long snapper.
I have no idea how you evaluate two different long snappers if they're both snapping. So I have a buddy who played long snapper at Madison, and I've asked him this a million different times, like what makes you better than other long snappers, and he's just like, I'm consistent and I snap the ball faster than people. Like that's really it. And then the other phase of that position is to be able to go downfield and make a tackle potentially, but that's obviously secondary to the ability to actually snap the ball, whether it's in a punting situation or a field goal situation. So, anyways, you get Cutting's going to be your starter now. VED-vick I'm going to call him VED-vick. So with like a G at the end so many times just because it sounds more normal to me. Like because he's also from Norway, by the way, which I find extremely interesting because how many football players do you have in the NFL right now that were not born in the United States? The answer to that is very, very few. So I think that's extremely interesting. But the best part about this guy is that he is an equally good punter as he is a kicker. Like, he can literally do both. So he's hitting 60-yarders today in practice. Mm-hmm. Granted, they were not being held, but he was hitting them off the tee or whatever for 60 yards. And accurately. I don't believe he missed a single one this practice, by the way. Then you've also got the ability to punt the ball downfield, too. Get good hang time there. And 50 to 60-plus downfield with hang time is as acceptable as you're going to find in the NFL. And that's honestly, that's better than Weil was last year, and he was by no means a bad punter. So you've got this situation now where this guy is just kind of getting thrown in, and I can't imagine there's a single special teams player that likes him because he's going to take someone's job, and it's like roulette to see whose job he's going to take.
You don't trade a 5th-round pick to have a guy.
He's going to be on this roster
2 or 3 weeks. Yeah,
he's going to be here, and that means that you're not going to keep two. You might keep two kickers. I've seen that done before, but I've never seen a team.
Well,
keep
if you're going to keep VED-vick and Bailey, then VED-vick's going to punt.
Right.
So yeah, I mean you can keep two kickers because VED-vick can kick, but
there have also been
It seems like this is a move to get Matt Weil out, but that's just my hunch, and that would mean they have to find a holder now.
See, that would make
Chad
the
Beebe
most.
was practicing. Adam Thielen's been practicing. I don't know who it's going to be, but somebody's going to have to be a holder, and if someone can figure that out, then I think it means Weil's gone.
It's typically the backup quarterback who is the holder.
Or punter. I mean, it's been the punter.
Yeah. It's whoever can. It's someone that can, theoretically throw the ball, so you can at least threaten a fake punt.
Yeah.
What's so interesting about this though is that I've seen in the past, I've seen kickers where teams have kept two kickers. One is your place kicker, and one is your kickoff guy, like the guy that's going to kick. I think the Chargers. I think the Chargers
did that with Bailey actually, because they had what's his name, Beeler. They had some guy who was a kickoff specialist for him. All he did, and then Bailey made every single kick he looked at.
I remember back. It's a long time ago now because the guy's actually a coach for the Vikings now. But when Nate Kading was in San Diego, when the Chargers were still in San Diego, he was the place kicker, and then they also had a kickoff specialist as well because Kading wasn't exactly known for his distance. So this is an interesting situation here where I tend to think that I'm agreeing with you in the sense that I think this is going to force Weil out first, simply because Weil seemed to take the most offense to it. If you guys have been paying attention to any of the news recently,
didn't he run out of practice or something?
He made a beeline for the locker room so that he could avoid. And how often does the media want to talk to punters, anyways? You know what I mean? He knew what was going on. So I would say he's probably the odd man out, but I also don't hate the idea of him kicking too. So it's like maybe you keep Bailey and you keep VED-vick. I don't know how this is going to go.
That's what I would bet on right now happens, I think, and Weil is gone. But
so that is Bailey going to hold for him? How embarrassed? That
must have been why Bailey was.
Dude, that's got to be the most. That's got to be the most embarrassing.
Attempt if Bailey can't get it there, then you get to throw a VED-vick in, and Bailey's holding.
That's got to be the most dehumanizing, humiliating thing that you can have in a professional career as a kicker is to have another guy come in, take your job, and you're holding for him to kick the ball.
Or even for Weil, last year's holder, watching the guy he held for take his job as holder. I don't know.
It's a very strange situation, but you can't help but not be impressed with this with VED-vick because he literally he's done everything well.
You have to. You literally have to be because it's the only way to justify a 5th round pick. So he better be impressive.
Yeah, and you're right. For what it's worth, though, if I was going to trade draft capital to a team to get a special teamer, it would be Baltimore because, as many of you I'm sure are aware of, John Harbaugh's background is in special teams. Yeah, I think right now he is the only head coach with a direct special teams background in the NFL. So if you're going to like any team to have good special teams, and the Ravens always do have great special teams for what it's worth, a lot of that is because of Justin Tucker and I believe what's the other guy, Sam Koch is their punter?
Yeah.
Or whoever it is. They got a veteran that's been very good. But they're good every year in, year out. So if they're willing to get rid of this guy while they were still keeping him in camp, it is the right team to trade with. I'm happy with that situation. And I look forward to seeing what this guy can do. Unfortunately, I don't have a clue how to evaluate the position. But
besides making kicks, and
it is interesting though because we've kind of seen an overhaul of special teams now under Marwan Malouf. Is that how you pronounce the new special team coordinator's name?
Pronunciations aren't really our thing.
Yeah, we'll let someone else tell us how that works. But I think it is kind of interesting to see the entire special teams kind of get overhauled in a matter of a couple of months here.
Yeah. So that's a tough adjustment for him, I'm sure. You just don't really know who you're working with. You don't even have a holder. I mean, yeah, because I think that's kind of a lot of the reason for this change is the holding is kind of been, I think, what maybe Zimmer has sort of not blamed the kicking on last year, but he's very clear about the fact that he likes Dan Bailey, and he hasn't said it as much about Weil. This makes me think holding might have been some of the problem last year with the kicking, and still is part of the problem in these practices. I don't know. It's a theory. If Weil end up cut, which is my hunch, it's just I'm reading into these things this way. It might not be the right way, but it's how I'm reading into them.
I'm okay with that. We've got 3 more weeks of this preseason to figure it out. A couple more weeks till the first round of cuts, so we'll see how this thing shakes out. But definitely a very interesting situation developing here after what was been, in my opinion, has been a fairly boring summer of football so far for the Vikings. Nobody's getting in trouble other than Holton Hill, who's just doing that for everyone. But no one's getting in trouble for the most part. You've got a lot of the position groups kind of weeding themselves out, and things are just kind of like shaping up to be fairly straightforward, kind of like a New England Patriots mini camp through summer.
Ooh, I like that. New England Patriots.
Yeah. Anytime you can relate to them, and then all of a sudden they throw this wrench in, and that is Corey VED-vick, who I will try to pronounce correctly moving forward here. Last thing on the Vikings that I want to talk about before we get into the Twins, we have to talk about butt sweat.
The Swass.
Yeah,
the Swass.
We have to. Yeah, Swass, butt sweat. I've heard a number of awesome nicknames for it, and I think this
yesterday. When was it? When he literally changed his pants in practice. Bradbury. He had to go change.
This is like, I understand that this is probably the first time that a lot of people are experiencing this, because this doesn't happen. No quarterback. First of all, got to point this out. I think it was dumb for Kirk Cousins to call him out to the media about this. I know it was in jest and it was funny and whatnot. I thought it was hilarious. I enjoyed the segment. I don't have a problem with. I just need to clarify for the people who are just going to inherently think that I hate Cousins because I liked Teddy Bridgewater in the past. But we didn't even mention him, and he played against the Vikings, by the way. So,
credit to us. Credit to us.
A
lot of people would hate us for that if we brought him up. So.
That's true. But my point being here is that this never comes up ever, and it probably should have never came up. It should have been something that they probably should have just talked about in camp. But this is a real thing that happens often. This is a normal problem. Yeah. There's a reason why the center has a towel hanging off of his pants, and that's why, is to make sure that the football is grippable.
It's like, Kirk's never been someone to speak out of turn, if you will, to the media. He's always saying the right thing,
right,
to a fault almost. It's almost like he's a robot. That's kind of where. Yeah. I remember when the Vikings signed him, and Redskins fans that's how it almost was disingenuous how he always said the right thing. So that leads me to believe that he kind of knows what he's doing here, and that it's a fun kind of calling him out. It's funny, but it's not actually a concern on the field, and it's just something that
I just find it
very have fun with. That's my thought. I don't think it's that serious.
It's not that serious, but the reaction that Bradbury had to it was what kind of made a reason for concern, because from my vantage point, granted I have not seen Garrett Bradbury face to face, all the information that I have on him is probably the same stuff that you guys have, but he does not come off as a guy who takes a joke super well. He didn't laugh about this. He was just kind of tried to keep it moving. It seemed like he was kind of embarrassed about it, and for someone that was playing, offensive linemen are very rarely in the spotlight. So it's to have the spotlight on him for something that he's probably not thrilled that his body does. Yeah, he's probably not thrilled about having butt sweat. I don't think most people are.
Well, yeah, I mean,
the problem here though isn't that Cousins made the joke about it. The problem is that Cousins isn't funny. That's the problem.
True.
This is the problem here. Think about it, the delivery is so important.
Well, think about the content of the joke too. It's so great. You have a center that sweats too much.
Yep.
And it causes a slippery football.
Yep.
You have a lot to work with there, and sure. it takes really remarkable stuff for it to not be funny and for it to be received poorly, which it was.
It was 50-50 across the board.
We're throughout football Twitter. Half the people were Kirk's really going to call out his center for having a sweaty ass.
Yeah. And then you've got the other half who are oh, that's funny. I love Kirk Cousins. He's funny now. Here's the thing. The thing is that he's not funny. And I think it was, I was listening to this on 1500. They were talking about the butt sweat thing, and they were losing their minds, rightfully so. But someone said something. I think it was Judd Zulgad that said something that if Brett Favre said it, it would have been a lot different, because he has comedic timing.
Well, part of it is it's your perception before, it's a perception that you already built for yourself. Kirk's already the robotic dad.
Right. So, and he's just he doesn't make good jokes, whereas Favre has comedic timing.
Jokes that are funny because they're it's an obligation to laugh at him, oh, it's a pun or something.
Right.
Or like his shoes that he wore to the Saints game. They're like the Nike Air white dad shoes or whatever. That's the extent of his humor.
Yeah, he's just not that funny, and he was kind of out of his element there. Which overall, I mean,
I respect the effort to be funny, though. You have to respect it.
I mean,
you don't respect it.
He's like, no, I mean, I do. I would love to have a funny quarterback, although I will say that it's the one position on the field where I don't really care if my quarterback is funny or serious or anything. Like, I mean,
who's funny now, thanks to social media, is Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. I would have never guessed that he'd be funny. And Peyton Manning was actually pretty funny, too. I don't know. Maybe a lot of quarterbacks have been pretty funny throughout history. Favre is obviously pretty funny. Rodgers tries to be funny, and if you like Rodgers, I can see how you might think he's funny because he's kind of like he's petty, and petty can be very funny with the right personality traits.
I'm on board with Rodgers, but you knew that.
Yeah. And Cutler was obviously hilarious.
Well, the part about Cutler was he wasn't trying to be funny. He was never, ever trying to be funny.
That's true. But anyways, I really enjoyed the butt sweat soundbite and whatnot. That was very thrilling and exciting for me last week.
And then he changed his pants in practice, I think yesterday or 2 days ago.
So did he drop trow on the field and like?
No. I think I from what I gather, he it was like in the locker room change, come back out. Well, he's just dropped drawers right there, and
it's good that he's playing in cold weather then because he won't sweat as much. I guess it's
like
inside
Miami or something.
Yeah. Oh God, the humidity too. I don't even. Okay, well we can stop at butt sweat there. Yeah, that's not great. But yeah, let's move on to the Twins here.
We have to.
We do. We've got about 15 minutes left here at the show, and we'll spend the remaining portion of the show talking about the Twins. Kind of falling apart here. So if you have been paying attention to the Twins over the weekend, like I said at the top of the show, they dropped 3 of 4 against the Cleveland Indians in one of the most anticipated series that I think the Twins have played in. Jeez, it's
been several years.
It's been at least half a decade, probably longer. And the Twins really didn't show up until Game 3. The first couple games were not. They look more competitive than they were in the box score, but the Indians had a firm grasp on both of those games. And then the Twins obviously came out and played a great game in Game 3, which was nice. It was good to see Odorizzi pitch well, even though it was for only 5 2/3. I'd love to see him get a couple more innings when he pitches. It very, very much bugs me that he can't get past the 6th inning. But he did well enough, and then obviously yesterday's game. Well, I guess it'd be Sunday's game for when you guys are listening to this. I imagine it'll be Tuesday. You've got the Twins who rallied against Brad Hand in the bottom of the 9th. Bring it back to 3-3. We'll probably spend. I imagine we'll probably spend a lot of time talking about that call at third base here, but we'll put pause on that for now. And then in the top of the 10th, Indians hit a grand slam. Carlos Santana launched one, and that was basically all she wrote. So Twins dropped the series. They are now tied atop the AL Central. Technically, the Indians are leading the Central Division. But if the season were to end today, you would have a Game 163 playoff to decide the Central. So the Twins have officially given up that 11.5 game lead, and it will be partially up to the Boston Red Sox starting tonight to get that lead back for the Twins.
Yeah, there's 2 ways of looking at this. You can look at the schedule and whatnot. Like Twins still have an easy, talking about your record against an easy schedule moving forward, but you always want to be the team that peaks at the end of the season rather than like in May,
of course.
And that's where the struggle for me is. Like I've said in the last show, I like hopped back on the Twins bandwagon when I saw them hitting 5 dingers a game back in April and May. And really since they were 40-18, and they're really about 500 or close to 500 since then,
right?
Which is not playoff caliber baseball. So,
sure.
I see this going one of 2 ways. A, the Twins lose the division and don't make the playoffs, or they make a wild card. and then end up facing the Yankees one way or another and get swept, or they win the division, play the Yankees, get swept. Or they're based on the history of the Twins-Yankees series in the past, they're not going to win more than one game in that series. Then the Yankees are super talented. They're loaded. That's just the way it's going to go. And if they do happen to get past the Yankees or whatever, I mean, the Astros are even better. So
it's definitely a difficult situation for the Twins right now. I'm trying to do the math right here. They've got 42 games left, something like that.
I don't want to do math, so I'll trust you.
Something like 42, 44 games left. And obviously being tied atop the division at this point in the season wasn't something that we necessarily foresaw at the beginning of the year. So you can look at it from that lens, where the fact that they are here and they have a very good shot of winning the division is definitely still in play. Or you can look at it
still
from
a positive season overall, for sure.
So far, and
I'm a fan now.
You look at the schedule here. You've got a lot of series against subpar teams remaining. So you've got this upcoming 2-game series against Milwaukee that starts Tuesday night. It's a 2-game series. Then you go to Texas for 4 games. And that, to me, about ends the difficulty of the schedule. You will mix in 3 games against Boston and 3 games against Washington, who was, I suppose, a postseason contender still.
Still got 2 more series against Cleveland, too.
Exactly. So the good that you can take away from this is that the Twins still very much control their own fate, and they will be playing against some very subpar competition, specifically down the stretch. So from September 16th to September 29th, the only teams that they'll be playing are Chicago, Kansas City, and Detroit. So you like your odds when that's the back end of your schedule, and like you said, you like the odds to get hot at the right time. But I don't know. It's a difficult pill to swallow, and it's an even more difficult pill to swallow because of how that game ended last night.
Oh my God, yeah.
So to set the stage for you, you've got, if you didn't stay up late and finish off that game last night, you've got the Twins who are in a situation where they're down 3-1 to start the bottom of the ninth. Couple hits arises in the middle of it as usual. You're in a situation now where you can hold Ehire Adrianza. I'm going to screw that name up too. We need to get easier names out here. But Adrianza's rounding third, and Tony Diaz, the third base coach, decides to send him here. Now, what's important is the number of outs, I think. And this is kind of the misconception that I'm seeing from fans, where a lot of people are like, oh, I'm pissed that he sent him, but they're looking at the result, right? They're seeing that he was out by 6 feet or whatever, and they're like, okay, that was a blown call. The reason to me, while it was a blown call to send him, was because there was only 1 out. So if you have a guy on third, that's the winning run, you can theoretically get a sac fly to win the game.
Yeah, that's the big difference.
That's the problem that I have.
It's 2 outs. It's one thing if it's
right.
Yeah.
If it's 2 outs, you send him no matter what, and you take your chances on them completing the relay.
Even if it's 0 outs, you still got a guy going to second base.
Right.
I mean, and you're gonna have that's.
I do not like making that second out at home plate. That's my big problem there with what Tony Diaz did. And if there was 2 outs, I would have said send him and never looked back regardless of the result. But because there was only 1 out, I have to look at the result, and that was an out. And I think that was a game-changing decision, one that they had to make in a split second, I guess. But I guess I just personally don't love the call, and I need to make this distinction very clear here. Is I don't love the call for 2 reasons. One, the result. Obviously, I'm a Twins fan. I hope the best for them. I wanted to win that baseball game. But the part that I genuinely as a baseball fan and someone who enjoys watching good fundamental baseball, I disagree with the coaching decision to send a runner from third with 1 out, especially if
it's close at all. If there's any doubt at all.
And really, there's 2 guys on this team that would have made it not close, and that's like Byron Buxton and, I don't know, maybe Jake Cave. Yeah, Jake Cave, I guess, who could have been pinch running there, by the way, which is just another decision that you might want to look at Rocco and say, I don't know if he made the right call. He could have pinch ran Cave there, potentially giving the Twins a better chance. But, overall, I guess that was a disappointing decision, and one that just immediately stood out to me. I looked up at the scoreboard and I saw 2 outs after he'd been thrown out at home, and I was like, that I can't see many coaches making that call on third base. I just don't see that happening with one out on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's just, I mean, obviously looking at things in hindsight is very easy to do.
Of course.
But I'm looking forward at the schedule now, and you're going to get the Indians September 6th through the 8th, and then 13th through the 15th.
I believe it's 7 games, right? 7 games with the Indians remaining?
6, 3-game series. But those are going to probably define the division, right?
Because, well, I mean, if you go 4-2 in those games, so let's just say you win both series 2-1 on both series, you're definitely putting yourself in position to win this, because the Indians do have a much more difficult schedule than the Twins do down the stretch. We get all of our games against the Royals, the Tigers, and the White Sox at the very end of the season, where the Indians have kind of built their record to date off of winning a lot of those games. I believe they're like something ridiculous, like 9-1 against Detroit, where the Twins have barely even played Detroit so far this year. Who, if you've seen Detroit, by the way, that is a very broken roster. Like in more ways than one. Ron Gardenhire is managing a sinking ship in Detroit. So I very much like the Twins' chances to make a comeback here. But I think the point that you mentioned earlier, something that needs to be harped on, is that the Twins basically have been playing 500 ball since mid-May, beginning of June, and that's something to kind of put into focus here. And part of that is because Buxton's been in and out of the lineup. He needs to stop crashing into walls. Like, that's got to stop. He needs to play every day, because the Twins are just that much better when he's in the lineup. And we did get the friendly news that Nelson Cruz's wrist injury will not keep him out of the lineup, that he's going to be he's going to be doing some situational hitting drills and working on his bat speed and stuff like that, and he'll be back in the lineup hopefully later on this week. So by the time we talk next about the Twins, they could be back on top of Central by a game or two. Or they could, in theory, the Indians, as of this, we're recording this on late Monday night. Before the Indians and Red Sox are underway, in theory, by tomorrow, the Twins could not have
they won't
top
be tied.
They
won't be tied.
They would have. This would be the first time all year that they wouldn't, at the very least, have a share of the AL Central if the Indians beat the Red Sox tonight.
Fun to think about.
Yep. So I believe that about rounds out the podcast, unless there's anything else that you'd like to touch on real quick.
I don't know. You probably don't have a bold prediction, but we're going to keep doing that. Each per show.
We can.
I got one right now. I can fire away while you think of one.
Yeah, go for it.
And that is that I have Baker Mayfield surpassing, well, A, 5,000 passing yards this year, and B, leading the league in passing yards. So I'm assuming that he would surpass, probably, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes would maybe lead the league, or Drew Brees or Brady maybe. I don't know. But I'm high on Baker. I'm high on the Browns. I think they're going to win that AFC North, and that offense is full of firepower, because people forget Galloway. Is that his name? Antonio Galloway or Callaway?
Oh, Callaway, yeah.
Yeah, he's got speed as well.
He just got suspended though for 4 games.
Right, but he's like his mentality is kind of in and out. He's kind of got like the sort of half effort sometimes, but when he plays, and he puts in the effort, he can be a solid
dude.
Game changer.
He might be the best number 3 receiver in the NFL right now.
Right. Which with Landry and Odell, Higgins, and David Njoku at tight end, you got Chubb and Kareem Hunt when he's back at 8 weeks in, something like that. That's an offense that Baker's gonna have a lot of fun with, I think.
I stand behind that for sure. I might be making this call probably a year or two late, but I'll say it anyways because it is a bold prediction. I think that this is going to be Phillip Rivers' year to win MVP.
Okay.
I
like it.
I've been a big fan of Philly cheese for a long time here. He's
been underappreciated for a long time.
He has been underappreciated, and part of that is the market that he plays in. He's not playing in Los Angeles, so a little bit bigger market. A few more eyes on him. And I do mean a few, because the fan base out there is not great, especially because they seem to prefer the Rams out there. But he has a ton of different weapons. Once Melvin Gordon gets into camp, that is. But I like Mike Williams to take a step forward. He's been been basically a red zone threat for the first 2 years of his career. I could see him moving forward. And Keenan Allen is, again, one of the more underappreciated players in the NFL as well. Precise route runner, great deep threat, excellent hands. You could see him having a breakout season. But the big difference maker here is you'll have Hunter Henry back, Stephen A. Smith. He will be playing this year. And so I like all of the options. I like the offensive line that they've built there. I like the coaching staff. And I like Phillip Rivers to continue to keep this team winning.
Chargers are a good pick. They're a good pick to make a run.
See, they're the type of team.
They've been building something for the last few years. That's it seems like it's going to.
If they could go 12-4 and beat out Kansas City for the AFC West, I think that
they were close to getting last year. Like, it was really close down the stretch. I think
and they have a great defense.
They had a nail biter game like week 14, week 15, or something like that.
And they have
Kansas City squeaked it out to get the division.
The Chargers have all the pieces to be a great team. So, and if they stand on top of the AFC West at the end of the season, I can definitely see Phillip Rivers being an MVP. So that will be my bold prediction to round out the show.
So you've got the Lions with the second best record in the NFC North, and you've got Phillip Rivers winning MVP. I've got the Bears finishing below 500, and Baker 5,000 yards passing.
There you go. So we've got one NFC and one AFC prediction. We'll keep this thing moving throughout the preseason here.
What's a good hit rate on our bold predictions? What do you think? Like, out of, I don't know how many we're going to have, but like, what percentage do you think would be like a decent hit rate? Because they are bold after all.
Probably like 20%, maybe 1 out of every 5.
Yeah.
Sound about right? I think we'll end up finishing here with, we got like 3 more weeks of the preseason plus 1 more episode this week. So probably 7 more bold predictions.
We could probably get it to 10. We'll just get it to 10.
Yeah.
We'll set it at 10, how about? And then we'll see how many we hit.
Sounds like a plan to me. All right. So that wraps up the Unbelievable podcast for Monday. We apologize for getting this show up later today. Drew was traveling over the weekend, and we had some scheduling conflicts later this afternoon, so we couldn't get it up earlier. But hopefully if you forgive us for that and enjoy the episode, we will see you again on Thursday. We'll be talking a little bit about the Vikings' upcoming preseason game, probably a little bit more on the Twins as well. Hopefully the next time we speak, it'll be a little bit more optimistic, I suppose. Anything else that pops up in Minnesota sports, we will touch on that as well. So thanks for listening, and we will catch you later on this week.